One of the major points that fiscal libertarians push is that if the government wasn't there, charities would take over and take their place much more efficiently. It's true that there is a lot less bulk waste. However, one of the major advantages of doing something in bulk is that the overhead is a lot less. The reason why Walmart and giant corporations can do things cheaply is because they do it on a massive scale. Is there waste? Yes. Does it slow change? Oh, hell yes. There is politics in every company, but their products are still cheaper than the product of a smaller business. Overhead involves logistics, space, price spent on machinery, employees, specialization, and advertising. The bigger the program or company, the more overhead shrinks by comparison to the total amount of output. Most small charities have to spend a ton on overhead, especially in fundraising and advertising areas. They don't have many specializations, and people have to work on a lot of different areas. Welfare is the biggest charity in the nation, and while it has a lot of waste, its overhead is freaking tiny by comparison with most charities. Complete lack of competition, though, sadly means slow change. However, it also means reliability and stability. In the military, all the equipment was about 15 years behind the commercial models, but that was because the equipment had proven itself with sufficient stability. Competition means change, however, it means that the poorest are without the basics. Pure competition also means that companies get cutthroat, and they only work toward the short-term profits. One of the things that a government welfare system can do is to give grants to competing charities and study them as scientific models to find the best ones that work and report changes needed to the current system. Just like science, it is slow to change. If a society wants to ensure that its poorest have the basic necessities and even some chance of upward mobility, this is the best system. Of course, some of the charities they study and give money to are faith-based, which raises other constitutional problems of their own. Anarcho-capitalists believe that getting rid of government would create a near paradise, as competition would keep everyone honest while moving us quickly forward in technology. Stability really would not exist, and the system would collapse. People don't invest or start new businesses when uncertainty is a leading factor in everything. There must be a sense of calm and a feeling of safety if they're going to start doing anything. Only the extremely wealthy would have the money to take the risk to try new ideas, as absolute poverty would not await them if they failed, and the extremely wealthy have proven to be the least likely risk takers out there. It is the small startups that take the risks, and majority of them fail. The overhead of competing charities without mandatory donations, as the very rich are not known for giving nearly as high a percentage of their wealth to charities as their middle class and poor counterparts, would not be able to cover all the poor and ensure that no one took risks. Communists believe that if done right, that giving all the government power and requiring the people to watch each other would cause stability. Sadly, this tends to cause distrust of each other in the community, and while it causes stability, without individual freedom to take risks to provide competition, all change would be completely slowed. Mind you, the Soviets and Chinese idealized science, or at least the areas they liked, so they advanced much more and faster than their previous imperial versions, but areas like the people, aka the government, didn't deem important was completely ignored. This is also the issue of labor incentive. During the Gilded Age, people could get paid barely anything. The majority stayed the poor and unwashed. In some ways, it was better than being subsistent farmers at the whims of the weather, but most of it caused a lot of health problems from pollution and industrial accidents. The unions had no teeth whatsoever, and if they existed at all, they were crushed. If the company had the ability to hire non-union members and move their company to non-union territory, then unions might as well not exist, which is exactly what most big companies would love and wanted. Unions also work on overhead. Taking your complaint up with the boss man or trying to sue the company would require risk out of your own pocket, firing, and poverty because no anti-union company would hire you in your dirty ilk. Unions allowed the workers to unite and cut down the overhead on the union. It reduced productivity and profits, but it ensured the workers were paid a decent wage and they could make their complaints heard. Data shows that as there has been a massive decline in union jobs, wages all over the market have dropped. Mind you, many unions had to weaken their stances as cheap labor overseas prevented them from taking such hard stances in manufacturing. We need service industry unions to emerge, and civil service unions to strengthen, as they are the only ones with negotiating room that won't be sent overseas. Sadly, the way science is funded, a scientific union is impossible in this country. Our only luck is a vote to get more science funding. Unions in welfare, however, can get to the point where they are so widespread that they do not really incentivize people to work. Finland and Italy are having these problems at the moment. People take so many days off or don't work efficiently because they know they can't get fired, that there is a serious problem with productivity. I've had fiscal libertarians point to Germany and Sweden as moving more toward American-style capitalism as they were experiencing the same productivity problems in Finland and Italy. They are currently some of the most financially stable nations on the planet, with shortage of labor and high productivity because they increase competition and privatization. I agree completely that they are moving more toward privatization and increased competition. However, they are still ridiculously socialistic in comparison to America or even Britain. Speaking of labor, some nations have most jobs state-run. Some have very few. State-run jobs are great in creating stability, but they can be bad if there are too many working for the government. France right now has nearly everyone employed by the government, exaggerating by the way, and they're having some serious issues. America can't even unionize its civil service labor force, and with all these cuts in spending, more and more jobs in the civil service sector will be dumped. There could be a system like FDR's CCC where any able-bodied person could work for the government at minimum wage just to keep their skills polished and hireable, as well as at least having them earn their welfare. Increasing money flowing through the economy, but spending anything that isn't on military or the rich is not going to happen under this Republican House. In terms of healthcare, VA healthcare currently has 1% spent on overhead and a 90% approval rating by people who use it. That overhead would be an even smaller percentage if everyone had it free to them. In Europe, 8% tax is paid by everyone for free healthcare, while people who can afford it here in the US spend about 16% of their income on health insurance, which is much higher overhead, plus soaring profits for stockholders from denying claims if they feel like it. Sure, you have a 20% higher chance of dying from cancer in Europe, but you won't die from really easily treatable diseases like the poor in America do, the many unemployed or uninsured people over here, because they don't get free healthcare unless you're dying on an operating table, which is way more expensive than preventable medicine. Also, seeing your doctor frequently raises your awareness of taking care of your health significantly, which is why Europeans eat healthier, exercise more, and live longer, because their lifestyle reduces their chances of getting sick or cancer in the first place. Finding the sweet balance between socialism and capitalism is essential for a nation. Government is needed to establish stability, cut overhead, and provide safety nets for risk takers and the most poor, and to provide infrastructure of both the physical nature and mental infrastructure to increase opportunities and ideas. Sadly, in America, that means safety nets for the richest and biggest companies, and our infrastructure is in shambles. Competition is needed to move a country forward and create new ideas and new technologies based on science learned through trial and error, with the majority of research going nowhere, which is only really worthwhile to companies when subsidized, unless the chances of profit is ridiculously high. A balance between socialism and capitalism, as Eisenhower noted, is the only way a nation can be great. We should be looking at other nations doing better than us to see what we can do to return ourselves to our former glory in the sweet spot between socialism and capitalism. If a nation invests in education, science, and infrastructure, the jobs create themselves. If a nation invests in war and the rich, luxury goods for the very rich will be the only available jobs, because they will be the only people with money and new technology won't exist.